So I began with the idea that I would follow the prompt that you provided about the Catholic social teachings as they apply to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And in the course of my research, I actually encountered something else that I thought was, you know, much more. It was much more engaging than just trying to, compare the two parties. Plus, I thought it could get kind of contentious if I did so, and I really just want to avoid that if I can. So this is my preface. I've been registered independent since I've been registered to vote, which is about as long as several of my peers in class have been alive. And I've never voted a straight party ticket, and I tried very hard to keep my own personal bias out of this. I'm just trying to recount factual events that took place in my examples and as I go. So bear with me. I don't mean to exert my opinion or bias into this article at all, or into this reflection. I'm going to begin with a quote from Pope Benedict XVI, which is, "The church is not a political power. It's not a party, but it's a moral power. Therefore, since politics fundamentally should be a moral enterprise, the church, in this sense, has something to say about politics." The church teaches that political activity is not the purview of the clergy, but is the responsibility of the laity. In fact, canonical law dictates that clergy must acknowledge this and support the mission of the laity throughout the world, but it strictly forbids that the clergy, of course, hold public office. While there are instances which permission has been given or can be given for clergy to play an active role in supporting or detracting from certain concepts, like, for example, trade unions or political parties. The idea of this is that they should and would only do so in a way that supports the Catholic Church and for the betterment of mankind, or humankind, as we say now. Therefore, it would be fair to say that bishops don't exceed their authority when commenting on political issues. Their guidance should be based on the faith and morals of the church. And, marriage, divorce, pornography, abortion, euthanasia, these are all moral issues that are the subject of a lot of political debate nowadays. And canonical law, as well as precedent, would suggest that the church has a duty to pass, to quote them, to pass moral judgment, even in matters relating to politics, whenever the fundamental rights of man or salvation of souls requires it. The goal is to help shape public policy, and that is in conformity with the law rooted in our nature that governs us all, no matter what our religious beliefs are. So politicians are lobbied by the church to ensure that the laws that govern us protect human life, that they respect human dignity in the person, that they preserve the church's view on the nature of things like marriage, they support family, ensure the safety of children, guarantee religious freedom, and make it possible for all citizens to share in conditions that are necessary for human living. Clerical relationships with politicians that identify themselves as Catholics begins with three key points: the truth of Catholic teaching, the inseparability of faith or from life, and the sincerity and the integrity of politicians. If Catholic politicians support policies and laws that seriously contradict the Catholic teaching, the initial assumption dictated by charity is that the support is that the bishops will support them, and it's most likely born of ignorance and or having been poorly catechized. And this is because it would seem reasonable to believe that anybody who professes to be a sincere Catholic would not knowingly remain outside of moral bounds when it comes to the teachings of the church, and the clergy would intervene on their behalf to correct any ill-conceived notions or anything that they're doing that might shape or motivate other people to deviate from the faith or the teachings. So there is a serious problem when Catholic politicians obstinately refuse to heed attempts by clergy and bishops to correct behavior when they are deliberately rejecting Catholic teaching, and they continue to identify themselves as Catholics and insist upon receiving sacraments, especially Eucharist. If I went too long between confessions when I was a kid, Sister Louisa would have cracked my knuckles if I received the Eucharist. So And there have been examples of bishops calling for a refusal of the Eucharist. And some political examples include or 2010 or 11, Governor Andrew Cuomo was living in sin with his girlfriend, and member of the Vatican's highest court, a consultant on the Vatican's highest court, called for for him not to receive the Eucharist anymore because of his living situation, and he was denied the Eucharist for that. And in 2019, once again, Governor Cuomo found himself in the crosshairs of the church, in that he signed a third trimester abortion bill into law, and that obviously caused a lot of upheaval, and he was perceived as celebrating the passage of that law while professing to be a practicing Catholic, or at least I believe that that's the correct recounting of the incident. And so a large contingent of people have been accusing clerical leadership that they're abusing their religious authority when they do things like that. But I would submit that their criticism is a demonstration of misunderstanding of the church leaders' responsibility and their authority within the church, based on the catechism and based on the dogmatic constitution of the church from Vatican II. Some people have argued that politicians, that their job is to represent their constituency, and that the will of his or her constituency is what leads them to support policies and laws that may not be in line with teachings, and that it's not fair to hold them culpable for that. But my argument back to that is, and based on my layman's interpretation of what I've read, is that I doubt anyone would argue that a leader of a political party is obligated to preserve the integrity of his or her party, right? And its policies, and that they can discipline or rebuke or revoke any members for going against them habitually. We've seen examples of cutting of funding or supporting primary opponents in elections. So this is not an uncommon thing. And there are for sure differences between political parties and the church, but this difference still kind of provides additional support from the position of a bishop who finds it necessary to take action, disciplinary action, similar to what the party leaders might do against politicians found to be intransigent, that are just unyielding in their support for grossly anti-Catholic policy. And what I uncovered that I thought was the most interesting doing this research on Catholicism, Catholic social teachings, and the political realm in America specifically, is that what we see unfolding in American politics right now is alarmingly similar to something that's starting to happen in the church. There's a priest in Minnesota named Father Altman, and I've listened to probably 5 or 6 of his online homilies, or I wouldn't call them homilies. They weren't they weren't done in a church or during church, but he calls Father James Martin. He's a Jesuit priest, and he's the head of some Catholic Social Justice League, I think is what he's the head of. He flat out called him a heretic for taking the stage at the 2016 Democratic National Convention because of the Democratic Party's position on socialism, which has been spoken out against by popes since the mid-1800s, by every subsequent pope from like 1848 till Pope Benedict XVI. Their encyclicals have included a direct rebuke of socialism. And so he just flat out called the guy a heretic, which I was kind of blown away by. Agree or disagree, it's pretty heavy language. Father Meeks in a Baltimore diocese has been kind of in a war with his bishop over what's going on. His message to his parishioners and how it fits into the political spectrum, and he finds, I find his message to be largely conservative. I don't think anybody would disagree with me on that. And the same thing for Father Altman in Minnesota. They're very conservative. They don't directly come out and endorse any particular candidate in any of their homilies or any of their online videos that I've encountered yet anyway, but it's very clear that the message is you cannot be a practicing Catholic in good standing to receive the sacraments and vote Democrat habitually on the national platform, especially because of their support of anti-Catholic policy, directly out of line with the moral teachings of the Church. So it's a really big argument, and it's almost like a microcosm of what's happening in America at large right now. It's pretty interesting to watch it unfold. It's eat popcorn and watch this guy just hammer each other. It's pretty brutal. But I guess in the end, politicians remain free to vote for whoever they wish, and membership in a political party is voluntary, and it's voluntary in a church. And a politician who has a fundamental disagreement with his or her party has every right to leave, the same way a Catholic or a Baptist or any Protestant or any religion has the ability to do the same with their church. Although, I think any denomination would argue that that's not without significant spiritual consequences. Oh, and along the lines of the political spectrum being reflected in the church, we have no small schism here actually in the Diocese of Owensboro. There's a local politician that is a lifelong Catholic, is a practicing Catholic. He is very devout from all accounts. I mean, I don't have a window into the guy's mind or anything, but he is at serious odds with our diocese and diocesan leadership right now. He's at serious odds with priests and clergy and clerics injecting themselves into political conversations directly, as opposed to just trying to guide the conversation as the church professes that we should do. So it's a very complicated matter when you have to break it apart. I can't believe how many canonical laws I had to read, and I talked to priests and so on. But it's really interesting that what we're seeing is the church is teaching that you should be involved. You should be part of the moral compass, and that the quote I started with from Pope Benedict XVI just lends more to that, and that is that the church is a moral body, and it's here to guide people in a direction that's to benefit them spiritually and to benefit mankind and to protect the church as well from intrusion from the political realm as much as possible by supporting candidates' policies, things that continue to allow for people to practice their religion freely in the United States. So I thought this was a whole lot more interesting than just here's a laundry list of things that Democrats support that are for and against, or the moral teachings, and here's a list of Republican talking points or policy points that are for or against Catholic social teachings. And I think that we're seeing a evolution in our church where there are these smaller dioceses. Like there was one thing I read from the Illinois Catholic Council of Bishops, and there was another one I read from Baltimore that gave what would seem to be instructions regarding the church's activity in politics, contrary to what the United States Council of Catholic Bishops and the Catechism and canonical law even outline for us. But I suppose that the church has to evolve with time as well. I don't want to speak about whether or not it's appropriate, or in my opinion, to do these things. I guess I don't really have an opinion yet. I don't think I know enough to form an opinion. But I hope that you don't mind that I deviated from the topic a little bit, but I try to stick with politics, and I think it's very interesting that there's such a large body of canonical law, and there's a large bank of information, official information from the church, that outlines the church's responsibility in the political realm. And I thought that the schism that we're seeing now between some of these priests and their bishops, or bishops and priests and dioceses against the American Council of Catholic Bishops is pretty interesting. So there you go.